Okay. Now, if I happen to go too far out, I have my backup that I can actually back up, just back up so that it can, and maybe forward just one stitch. And we're ready to stitch. We can go ahead and press done, and we can continue quilting on the rest of our quilt. I'd like to teach you how to use point to point with a flower or a block design, and then how important point to point is on a continuous line if there's an overlap on your designs. So first of all, on my screen I have just a flower, and if I wanted to repeat this flower 3 times, and then I had the point to point checked, we'll use our little pointer here. If I have this checked and I press repeat, what this does is I only see one flower, but it's skewed it. And what has happened, it's taken this flower and it's put the points together. So it's actually stacked them on top of each other. But if I uncheck this and press point to point, then it puts the flowers next to each other, and you'll see the dotted line, and we can zoom in on that so you can see that. That dotted line is my jump from each point. So if you're doing a block that has the design that they don't do continuous stitching from design to design, then you don't want your point to point checked. Now I'd like to show you a continuous line design and show you how, when we use point to point, how important that is. So I have this design, and my start point is here, and we can zoom in on that so you can see that's my start point. My end point is inside of the design. So I need those 2 designs, when I repeat them, to overlap. So I need them to become the end point of this design to match up with the start point of the next design. Go into that. If I don't, let's do 2 repeats. If I don't push the point to point, let's zoom in on that, and you can see where there's my start point of my second design. You can see where that needs to go into there. So it needs to have that overlap. Those points need to be together. If I press that and then redo it, as long as I don't leave this screen, I can keep previewing my designs. Now you will see how it matches up all the way across, and everything will go along without doing a tie off and jumping. I want to teach you how to resize a triangle, whether it's parallel going across your quilt or whether you have to rotate it on a 45-degree angle. So first off, we're going to place a triangle in this block, or at least measure it out, and I have my triangle design in my quilt on my frame, and what I have right now on the screen, I have a width and I have a height. And I don't think it fits in here, so I need to resize that. So what I want to do is I want it right from edge to edge. So I'm going to drop my needle to make sure that's right where I want it to be. I'm going to reset home. And now zeroed out my measuring. I'm going to move this, and as I move it at an angle, and I put it right up into that the corner here on the top right, it's given me 2 measurements, and they are different measurements than the width and the height here. Now what I want to do is I want those measurements to fit this area. So I press the button that says Fit to Area, and now you'll notice that it's going to change, and now it will fit within that area. So I found the height of this triangle, and I found the width of this triangle. And now I can stitch it out, and it would be perfect within that block. Now I have a triangle that's on a 45-degree turn, and so I need to find the measurement. So if I move my needle down here and measure as I did on this other one, what that does is it measures the base, but it's not the correct size It doesn't give me a height. It's giving me this measurement and this measurement, which is actually a square, but I need this measurement and this measurement. And so with this, I use my ruler. So what I will do is, this is the height of my triangle, and put that in there, and it's put 4.5, and that's my height. So 4.5. And then I need to find the width of my area. And that is about 9.25. So I need to type in 9.25 and place that in there. And then I need that. Did I move my machine? Because I see something different. So I need to change that again. We better lock our motor so I don't shift my shift. We'll go ahead and put 4.5. I have those two measurements, and then I want them to fit that area. So that's the area that I have. Now is the time that I can rotate it. So you noticed I did all of my resizing as it was a parallel triangle. It was not rotated. Now I can go back in to my rotate, and I can rotate that 45 degrees. And now you'll see there's a different measurement, but I know that this will fit within this triangle that I quilted out here. I'd like to teach you how to take a design, especially one that you rotate maybe on a point, and if it's too large of a design for your throat space, as to how to use the reset current resume position and stitch the top half of it and then stitch the bottom half of it. So I've got this design in my screen, and I want to go first to Run Quilt, and I want to see how the stitch path is. So I'm going to go New Start Point. I want to scroll, and I want to watch that white dot and see where it's scrolling. And I've rotated this so that it's scrolling all across the top first, and then it goes down into the bottom half. So this is a good design to use to do that with. We'll go back. Now we need to resize this. We want to go to Resize, and to resize this, there's the size of the block, but the perimeter is what I'm looking for. So I want to measure this width across, and this is a square block. So I know that if I measure this and keep aspect ratio, it'll resize the height as well. So if I come over here and I want to put my hopping foot on this one 1/4 inch inside and reset home, and then if I move this aside to the right, it gives me a width. If I press the keep aspect ratio width, it will resize the height proportionately. There's my new measurement. They're almost exactly square. Now it's time to position this in my pattern on my fabric. Go to Reposition Screen, and since the start point is in the center, I could use Find Start Point, or I could use Find Center Point. So I've marked my fabric with an X so I know exactly where my center is. I'm going to put my needle in the down position so I know that's exactly where it should be. And then I could use either one of those for this. Because the center point is the start point, I could use either one. I'll just find center point, and it's placed my crosshairs, which represent my needle, right in the center of the pattern. So I know that that will stitch out fine. But maybe I want to press follow and zoom in on this and check my points. So I come over here and I check this point to make sure that's correct. If I come up here, check that point, that's right on. And if I come down here and check that point, it's right on. If it wasn't, I could do a little nudging, but this looks really nice, so I think I'm going to go ahead and start quilting. Go to Run Quilt, start quilting, and I have my speed. I think I'll speed up just a little bit. Let's change our stitches per inch to 12. My start, my tie off, my end, and my pull up. I want to stitch, so I want to make sure that is checked and start quilting. Let's move to the center point and let me bring up that bobbin thread. Resume. Now it'll stitch the top part of this, and when it gets down to working down into my bottom part, then I'm going to press pause, and then we'll go from there. If you feel like it's not going to hit where you want it to on a point, you can always manipulate your fabric with your hands. That's why sometimes it's better to go a little bit slower so that you know you're going to get those points right where you want them. You can see on the screen where it whites out, that is what has been stitched. So I know that my whole bottom part needs to be stitched. Has this last part to finish, and then it's going to work down into my bottom part. Now when I get somewhere near the center, I'm going to pause. It stops the machine, and now I want to press my needle to the down position, and if you have the HQ16, you would use the half stitch. The Fusion and the Avante, you can use your handlebars. And then I want to disable my motors. That's a very important thing, is to disable your motors, because if I start advancing the quilt with the needle down, I could tear my quilt, and that would not be good. So I've disabled my motors so you can feel that they're disabled. I need to advance the fabric, the quilt, so that I can stitch this last part. Gonna give it a little coax there with my bars. Now it's all totally in view so that I can quilt it. Stabilize my quilt again. If you have some area here that you feel like needs to be basted so that it's stable, then you could go ahead and pin this area for now until you're finished with your block. Okay, now I'm going to make sure that there's no tugging on the quilt and everything is stable. You can see that everything is the way it should be. Now, on my screen, there's a button that says Reset Current Resume Position. So what I want to do is I want to reset my current resume, which is down here. I want to take the crosshairs and put back down there as to where that position is. So if I press that, it moved those crosshairs down to where I need to continue stitching in my design. Now I can bring my needle up, I can press resume, and if you don't want to do a tie-off there, which I wouldn't, I would want it to just continue quilting, then I can go ahead and start stitching. I wouldn't want that current pattern pressed, checked, so I want that off for sure, and then I can go ahead and continue my quilt. There we go. It landed right where it needed to on that point. We're hoping that over here it'll do the same thing. It's going to come down to my point down there. So if I feel like this is good, it shouldn't be off because we haven't shifted anything. So that's right on. It's coming around. This is the one that we might worry about, but this one on that side hit, so I'm pretty confident that this one's going to also. There it goes. It just kissed that just like it did on all three of the other side. And now it's going to come and end right at the start point. Perfect.